Okay, so we've been talking about the famine for the last few days. So the blight began in what year? What year was it? Does anyone remember? 1845, right? So a disease called blight started damaging potato crops in Europe. So it wasn't just Ireland, it was all over Europe. But remember, what do we say about Ireland? Ireland doesn't have great conditions. So we heavily relied on potatoes because they were so well adapted to grow in very poor conditions. Because Ireland is very damp, it's raining at the moment. So potatoes are perfect because they don't give up that easily. They're very resilient, right? But in Ireland, the first signs of blight occurred in August of the same year. As farmers headed to work, they noticed a bad smell coming from their fields. The leaves of their potato plants were black and dead, okay? And when they pulled them from the ground, all that was left was a slimy mush, okay? Even if they seemed healthy when they were harvested, the potatoes were rotten several days later. By October, every county in Ireland was affected by blight. The disease spread quickly. Nobody knew what was causing it or how it could be stopped. It was 15 years before scientists discovered that it was a fungus causing the blight. Okay, so this is what potatoes with blight looks like. So can you see there, it's kind of blue, dark blue, kind of blackish looking. So that would be the fungus here as well. There's little blue bits of fungus. So there would be an awful smell from them and they would not be edible. They'd be disgusting, so you couldn't eat them. Okay, so people obviously became very hungry because we were very dependent on potatoes. And this still is largely, affects Irish people today because we are still heavily reliant on potatoes. Because for some reason, Irish people love the whole idea of potatoes and how resilient and reliable they are, right? But this one year when they weren't very reliable, it all went to the dogs. Okay, so the farmers gathered what potatoes they could, hoping they would have enough food for the winter. But by the spring of 1846, many families had eaten through their stock of potatoes. People sold anything they could to buy food to keep their families alive. So all their coats, shawls, fishing gear, animals as well. They gathered wild mushrooms, berries, nettles, dandelions and seaweed. Anything they could eat. Some went as far as to drain blood from their cows. Ugh. They mixed the blood with meal to make a kind of pudding. Okay. Others were so desperate they tried to eat the rotten potatoes, and this made them horribly sick. Okay. So here's a picture of people that were picking berries and nettles. So imagine having to resort to eating nettles. So nettle soup was a very popular dish back then because it was so easy to make. Okay, so nettles of all things, we are terrified of nettles nowadays. If people see a bush, they won't even stick their hand in, but they were picking nettles back then so they could eat. Okay, so they were very hungry. Okay. And soup kitchens were set up in 1846 by a religious group called the Quakers. So Quakers believed it was their duty to help the weak and poor. They gave out hot food to the people who were starving. And by 1847, there were soup kitchens all over Ireland. They were used by hundreds of people every day. However, disease spread quickly through the crowds, and one bowl of soup a day was not enough to stop starvation. And eventually, the British government shut down the kitchens, claiming that the following year's harvest would be better. Okay, so what I want you to do is imagine being in the queue at a soup kitchen. So what can you see, hear and smell, and how do you feel? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to send me a video of you saying 10 different things that you can see, hear and smell when you're in a queue at a soup kitchen. So look at this picture here. So they're all queuing up. Do they look happy? They're about to get food. They look happy? No, they don't. They all look very upset. And even when these people got their food, they were still upset. Okay, because it did not taste nice and they had to wait so long to get it. Okay, so there was an awful time. Do you think it would smell nice in there with all the people crammed inside? No. Do you think that it would smell nice? So do you think the food that they were getting for free was very nice? No, I don't think so. And what can you see and hear? So if people are upset, would you see people smiling around the place? Would you see people dancing? Would you see people singing? Would you hear people talking to each other and being really friendly? No, it'd be very cold and damp and upsetting, wouldn't it? So tell me 10 things, so with a video, 10 things that you think would happen or you'd see, hear or smell inside in one of these queues in a soup kitchen. Right?